I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, trying to make sense of a nightmare that hit right after I lost my job. It's like the universe decided to kick me when I was already down. My wife, Lisa, had always been the picture of stability, sweet, supportive, the kind of person everyone thought had it all together. We'd been married for 5 years, and honestly, I thought I knew everything about her. Turns out, she was hiding a pretty huge secret. It started a few weeks ago, right after I got laid off. I wasn't just upset, I was spiraling. Money was tight, my confidence was shot, and I'd spend hours staring at job listings I knew I'd never land. Lisa tried to be supportive, but I could tell she was tense, distracted. Still, I didn't think much of it at first. That's the thing about red flags, they don't always come with blinking lights. Sometimes they're subtle, like a hesitation when she answered her phone or her quick, nervous glances when I asked about her day. But last night, everything changed. We were celebrating our anniversary, just the two of us. I was trying to pretend I wasn't drowning in despair, trying to be normal. We made reservations at that fancy Italian place downtown, something she'd been excited about for weeks. The candlelit table, the soft hum of jazz in the background, her hand brushing mine across the table. Yeah, it should have felt romantic, but my stomach was knotting up with anxiety I couldn't shake. And then it happened. I saw it. A message slip onto her phone. It was quick, just a flash. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. Love you." My heart actually stopped. My palms went clammy. I felt a surge of heat in my cheeks, then cold sweat prickling the back of my neck. I froze, staring. She was mid-bite of her pasta, oblivious, but I couldn't look away. My mind was racing. Who was it? Was it someone I knew? Was it Tom? That name hit me like a punch. Tom, our supposed friend, the guy I'd introduced to her a year ago. I didn't say a word. I didn't want to ruin the night just yet. Instead, I quietly grabbed her phone when she was in the bathroom, making an excuse about needing to check something. My hands trembled as I unlocked it. The message was real there, plain as day. I could see the words, the heart emojis, the time stamp. They'd been texting all evening. The realization hit me hard. I'd been blind, but now I saw everything. I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. I felt a hot surge of betrayal, like I'd been punched in the gut. How long had this been going on? Was it recent, or had it been going on since we got married? My mind spun with questions and rage. The worst part: she was still sitting right across from me, acting as if nothing was wrong. Like she didn't just betray me on the night we were supposed to celebrate our love. I looked up and saw her return, smiling, unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I wanted to scream, to tear her apart with words, but I kept my voice steady. "Who's Tom?" I asked flatly, watching the color drain from her face. Her eyes widened and her mouth moved like she was going to deny it. But I'd already seen enough. I knew the truth. And that's when I realized my marriage, my trust, everything I believed in was shattered, and I'd be damned if I just let her get away with it. No, this wasn't going to be another quiet disappointment. It was time to plan my revenge. I needed her to feel what I felt: betrayed, humiliated, powerless, and she would. She didn't see it coming. That's what made this so satisfying. The moment she realized I knew, her face twisted into something ugly, like she'd already started to regret everything. I told her I needed a walk after dinner. She tried to hold my hand, but I yanked it away. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside, the city's neon lights flickering overhead. I could feel my heart pounding, blood rushing in my ears. I didn't know how I would do it, but I knew I'd find a way. I'd make her regret what she'd done. I was already planning it. I had to, because a marriage built on lies is dead. And I refused to go quietly into that darkness. I spent the whole night tossing and turning, replaying everything in my head. The sight of that message, the way her smile was so fake, the way she kept pretending everything was normal, even as I sat there feeling like my world was crumbling. It was as if I'd been hit by a freight train. And the worst part, I realized I couldn't just walk away and forget about it, not without making her pay. The first thing I did was go to the garage and grab the most obvious piece of evidence I could find: my old toolbox. Inside, I had a few things I'd kept from my previous jobs: some tools, a few gadgets, and more importantly, a small, discreet recording device I'd bought on a whim months ago. I'd never really planned to use it, but that night I knew I had to. I set up the device on the coffee table in our living room, aimed it at her usual spot on the couch, and pressed record. Over the next few days, I watched her carefully. She went back to her routine, pretending everything was fine, but I noticed her phone always within arm's reach. She'd leave it face down, always nervous, always looking over her shoulder. I started lurking in the shadows, checking her messages when she wasn't around, sifting through her social media. It was all there. Web of lies I never wanted to see. One night I saw her leave her phone on the nightstand while she went to the bathroom. I quietly grabbed it, unlocked it with her fingerprint which I'd secretly collected earlier, and found more proof. Pictures of Tom, intimate messages, plans for their next rendezvous. My stomach clenched. That's when I realized this wasn't just a fling. It was something deeper, more calculated. She'd been sneaking around for weeks, maybe months. I kept the evidence safe, knowing I'd need it for what came next. I also started researching how to make her regret everything. It wasn't about just catching her. I wanted her to feel the cold sting of betrayal. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't some doormat she could wipe her feet on. I wanted to ruin her, but I had to do it smartly. No reckless accusations, no shouting matches. I had to be patient, calm, ruthless. One afternoon, I confronted her. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. She came home from work tired, but I could see the tension in her eyes. She tried to act normal, like nothing was wrong. I looked at her dead in the eyes and said, "We need to talk." She hesitated, then sat down across from me, nervously smoothing her hair. "What's going on?" she asked, voice trembling. I straightened up, pulled out my phone, and played the recordings I'd made. The sound of her voice, the laughter, the whispered plans, they all hit her like a punch. Her face went pale, eyes darting around like she was trying to find an escape route. "You've been lying to me," I said coldly. "For how long, Lisa?" I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, but her voice cracked under the weight of her guilt. "Oh, I think you do," I said. "I've got the messages, the pictures. The truth is out, and you're not going to bullshit your way out of this one." She looked like she wanted to crawl under the table, but I kept my voice steady. "You're going to regret this. I promise you that. I've got plans for you, and I want to see how long you can keep pretending everything's fine." Her eyes filled with tears, but it was too late for that. I'd already made my move, and now it was all about setting the stage. I wasn't going to just leave her, no. I needed her to feel the full weight of what she'd done. I had a plan, a calculated one, to make her realize she hadn't just betrayed me, she'd ruined herself. That night I stayed up late, making a list of everything I could do. I knew her weak spots, her pride, her need for validation, and I was going to exploit them. I would let her feel the shame, the humiliation, without even lifting a finger yet. The game had just begun, and I was already one step ahead. As I looked at the monitor showing her sleeping soundly, I knew I wasn't done. Not even close. The plan started taking shape quickly after that. I knew I had to be patient, calculated. Revenge isn't just about causing pain. It's about doing it in a way that leaves a lasting mark. I wanted her to realize she'd lost everything: her marriage, her dignity, her peace of mind. But I also knew I couldn't just act impulsively. It needed to be precise, ruthless, and most importantly, undeniable. I started by planting little traps. Not obvious, just enough to make her feel like she was losing control. I mentioned to her that I'd seen her phone records, just enough to make her suspicious, but not enough to blow my cover. I subtly hinted that I was onto her, watching her every move. Her face would tighten every time I said it, but she never admitted anything. She just played the part of the innocent wife, which made this whole thing even sweeter. One evening I told her I wanted to talk. She looked nervous, like she knew what was coming but was trying to pretend it was nothing. We sat in the living room, the air thick and heavy. "You know I've been watching," I said, my voice low but steady. "I've got everything, the messages, the photos, the recordings. You can't lie your way out of this one." Her eyes darted around, lips pressed into a thin line. "I don't know what you think you have," she whispered, but her voice cracked. "Oh, I know everything," I said, "and I want to make sure you understand what you're about to lose." She swallowed hard, her hands trembling. "Please," I was stupid. "It doesn't mean anything." "That's the thing," I replied, leaning in. It asterisk does mean something. It means your marriage is dead. You crossed a line, Lisa. And now I'm going to make sure you regret it every single day. That night, I started executing the first phase of my plan. I used her slip-ups against her, sending her subtle messages, leaving her small hints that I knew. I changed the password on her phone and I made sure she found out I'd read her texts. Her face twisted in rage and fear. She tried to demand answers, but I just smiled and told her she'd see what was coming. The next morning, I arranged for her to find her favorite blouse ruined, stained, ripped, and left on the doorstep of her closet. Small things, but they added up. It was about breaking her spirit, making her feel watched, controlled. She was losing her grip, and I loved the way her eyes kept darting around, searching for control she no longer had. I also made a point of being extra attentive to her, acting overly calm but dismissive. I'd brush past her, ignore her when she tried to talk to me, let her feel the cold distance. Every glance I gave her was filled with disdain. I wanted her to understand that I was done trusting her, that I was orchestrating her downfall. And then came the big move. I set up a fake outing on social media, an anonymous account that teased her about her infidelity. I posted vague clues enough to make her paranoid. Her phone buzzed constantly with fake messages from strangers, whispering about her betrayal. I watched her panic, her face gone pale, hands shaking at dinner one night. "You really think you're clever, don't you?" she hissed at one point. I smirked. "I'm just getting started. You made this bed, you're going to lie in it." She broke down that night, sobbing in the bathroom. I stood outside, listening to her desperate whispers, feeling the cold satisfaction of a plan well executed. She thought she could hide what she'd done, but I was making sure she knew she was exposed. Nothing she could say or do would change what was coming. The worst part, I saw her trying to manipulate Tom, sending him messages, trying to fix things. It was pathetic, really. She thought she could talk her way out of this just like she'd always done, but I wasn't done yet. I knew her weakest points and I planned to exploit every single one. As I watched her crumble, I couldn't help but think, this was more than revenge. It was justice. She'd betrayed me, and I was going to make sure she paid the price. Every move I made was a calculated strike, a reminder that she couldn't escape her own lies. I was just getting started, and she would regret ever crossing me. The days that followed were a slow, deliberate unraveling for her. I kept up my silent surveillance, knowing she was already feeling the pressure. Her confidence was shattered, her facade cracking by the hour. I could see it in her eyes: fear, desperation, and a growing sense that she had lost control. That was the point. I wanted her to feel powerless, cornered, and humiliated. I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer just to get the process going on the separation papers. I made sure she saw me with the lawyer's card on the table, even if I never explicitly told her, just enough to let her know I wasn't backing down. I also started gathering more evidence, downloading everything I could find: texts, photos, emails. I wanted irrefutable proof that she'd cheated, and I'd make damn sure she paid dearly for it. One afternoon, I came home early from work, well, what was left of my job anyway. She was sitting on the couch, clutching her phone tight, nervously scrolling through her messages. I just walked in, cool and quiet, and sat across from her. "You've been trying to hide things," I said softly but with ice in my voice. "But I already know, and I'm sick of pretending everything's fine." Her eyes welled up, her voice trembling. "Please, we can fix this." "Fix what?" I cut her off. "Your lies, your betrayal. You think I'm stupid. I've seen how you look at Tom, how you've been sneaking around every chance you get." She looked away, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was lost and—" "Save it," I snapped. "I want you to understand something. This isn't just about some stupid affair. It's about trust, something you threw away like it was nothing. And I'm not going to let you do that to me anymore." She tried to say something, but I didn't let her. Instead, I pulled out my phone, turning on the recording app I'd been using. I pressed play, and her voice, her words filled the room. The whispered plans, the flirtation, the promises she'd made to him, it was all there. She froze, eyes wide with shock, realizing I'd heard everything. "That's enough," I said quietly, shutting the app off. "You're done. Your life is about to change, and I want you to remember one thing: I'm not going to be the fool anymore." Her face twisted with guilt and rage. "You're going to ruin me," she whispered. Exactly, I replied, and it starts now. I handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was all the evidence I'd collected, printed and organized. Her eyes darted to it, trembling. What's that? Your future, I said simply. Or your past, depending on how you look at it. That night I made her pack her things, told her she was leaving. She begged, pleaded, tried to guilt me into changing my mind. But I had made up mine long ago. Watching her collect her belongings, I felt a strange mixture of relief and cold satisfaction. She was finally getting what she deserved. Before she left, I handed her the keys to the house, the one thing she still thought she owned. Take them, I said, because from this moment you're on your own, and don't come back. Her face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks as she looked at me with a mixture of anger and despair. I watched her walk out the door, the sound of her heels echoing in the empty hallway. As she disappeared down the street, I felt a strange calm settle over me, like I'd finally taken control of my life again. I knew this wasn't over, not yet, but I'd won the first battle. Standing in the silence of the house, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The pain of betrayal still burned, but I was free of her lies. I looked around at the empty rooms and thought, this is the start of my new life. The one I choose to build, without her shadows looming over me. I'd never let anyone betray me like that again. That I promised myself. The days after she left felt like a strange kind of relief mixed with emptiness. I had spent so much time planning, so much energy obsessing over her betrayal, that once it was all done, I almost didn't know what to do with myself. The house was eerily quiet, no more her footsteps, no more her voice, no more lies. I could finally breathe again, but beneath that calm there was a flicker of something darker, satisfaction. I took a long walk outside, feeling the cool air brush against my skin, letting the silence settle into my bones. I knew I'd done what I set out to do. Her betrayal was exposed, her confidence shattered. I'd handed her the evidence, sealed tight, and watched her walk out with nothing left to say. I felt a strange sense of closure, at least for now. But I also knew that I'd need to keep my guard up. Revenge isn't just about one big move. It's about making her feel the consequences every single day after. I also started to reflect on the whole mess. The betrayal, the regret, I kept replaying. Everything, trying to understand how I'd gotten here. I realized I'd trusted her blindly for too long. I'd been comfortable, maybe even complacent. That was my mistake. But I learned something important. I shouldn't have let her get away with it for so long. Trust is earned and it's fragile. Once broken, it's almost impossible to fix. I'd been naive and I paid the price. One afternoon, I finally called a lawyer to start the formal separation. I wanted everything on paper, custody, assets, everything. I knew she'd try to manipulate or delay, but I was prepared. I had the evidence, I had the plan, and I wasn't backing down. I wanted her to see that I was serious. I was done being the victim. But the most surprising thing was how peaceful I felt. For the first time in weeks, I could think clearly. Without her constant lies, I could focus on rebuilding myself. I went back to the gym, started working out again. Felt good to sweat out the anger, the frustration. I even scheduled a few sessions with a therapist, needed to process all of this, not just lash out. One night, I sat with a drink looking at the photos I'd taken of her during the chaos, her anxious face, her trembling hands, her tears. It all felt so distant now. I felt some guilt, sure, but mostly I felt liberated. This was the end of her reign of lies. She had made her choice and I had responded in kind. I wouldn't let her drag me down anymore. Then I thought about what I'd say to anyone in my shoes. Trust becomes fragile after betrayal and revenge. It's a double-edged sword. It gave me some sick satisfaction, but it also left a bitter taste. I knew I'd have to be careful. Revenge isn't a clean thing. It leaves scars on both sides. But in this case, I felt justified. She had taken everything from me, my job, my stability, my trust, and I was making sure she understood that actions have consequences. So now I'm focused on me, moving forward, rebuilding. I don't plan to make the same mistakes again. I've learned that trusting blindly is a setup. That betrayal cuts deep. And that sometimes revenge isn't just about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your own dignity, your own power. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this. Trust carefully and don't be afraid to take control when someone crosses the line. Because if you don't, they'll keep walking all over you. And trust me, revenge isn't pretty, but sometimes it's the only way to get your life back. The last few weeks have been a whirlwind of cold clarity and quiet resolve. I handed her the keys, watched her drive away with tears in her eyes, and finally felt the heavy weight of betrayal lift from my shoulders. That moment, seeing her leave, knowing I had taken back some shred of control, was the most freeing thing I'd experienced in a long time. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life from the chaos she'd thrown me into. Since then, I've dedicated myself to rebuilding, slowly, carefully. I've cut out all the noise, all the false promises of happiness she once pretended to offer me. I've started therapy, not just to process what happened, but to understand how I let it get so far. I realized I'd been so caught up in her image of perfect stability that I ignored the signs, ignored myself. Now, I focus on my own peace, on making sure I never get blindsided again. Every morning, I wake up with a sense of purpose. I go for a run, clear my head, and remind myself I deserve better. I've started to reconnect with friends, those who genuinely care, and I'm taking steps to get my career back on track, no matter how slow it feels. It's not about revenge anymore. It's about healing, about proving to myself that I am stronger than the betrayal she tried to bury me under. I look around my apartment, cluttered with reminders of a life I once thought was perfect, and I realize it's time to start fresh. I've already begun making some practical changes, changing passwords, closing old accounts, and even moving some of her stuff to the trash. It's symbolic, but it helps me feel lighter, like I'm finally closing that chapter. There's a strange sense of calm now, mixed with a sharper awareness. I know how fragile trust can be, and I'll never take it for granted again. I've learned that revenge isn't just about causing pain. It's about making someone feel the loss, the regret, the emptiness they leave behind. But I also know that real healing comes from within. I'm not just punishing her, I'm reclaiming myself. Looking back, I see how everything fell apart so quickly. The betrayal, the lies, the plan I executed. It was brutal, yes, but necessary. She needed to feel what it was like to lose control, to be exposed. And I needed to remind myself that I don't have to be a victim of someone else's choices, that I can fight back, that I can take back my dignity. So here's my final word. Trust is fragile, but your strength is. When someone crosses that line, no matter who they are, you have the power to fight for yourself. It might be messy, it might be painful, but it's worth it. Because at the end of the day, life is too short to be held hostage by betrayal. I've closed the door on her and I've opened a new one for myself. One built on honesty, respect, and a future I choose to create. No more secrets. No more lies, just me, finally in control. And that, I think, is the real victory.